Meanwhile, the US military says it's carried out strikes in eastern Syria against two facilities used by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. These strikes took place early on Friday morning near Abu Kamal, which is a Syrian town on the border with Iraq. Live now to Bill Roggio, who is a US military analyst, editor of the Long War Journal at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Good to have you with us, Bill. What was the purpose of these US strikes in Syria today?
Yes, the purpose is to, the U.S. military wants to deter the Iran-backed militias from attacking its bases. There's been at least 19 attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria since the war between Hezbollah and Hamas broke out on October 7th. Dozens of U.S. military personnel have been wounded in these attacks. And the militias, which are, again, backed by Iran, they have been attacking U.S. bases with drones, with rockets, various ways. And the U.S. military in the past, these attacks have happened before, and the U.S. military has been very tepid in its response. So these militias are emboldened. They've linked the U.S. presence in Iraq and Syria with the war between Hamas and Israel. And they essentially want to drive the U.S. out of the region. That is in Iran's interest. It's in the militia's interest. And so the U.S. is trying to restore some type of deterrence, try to basically encourage Iran and these militias to not conduct further strikes.
So, Bill, as a deterrent, as a warning, do you think it will work?
No, I actually don't think it will work, because the time for deterrence was years ago when these groups were launching these attacks. The problem the U.S. has, it's in a real catch-22. These bases, some of these bases are in very remote locations, in areas that are surrounded by hostiles. They're in danger of being overrun. So the U.S. has been very, very cautious in its response because of this. And therefore, so what these militias have been conditioned to think that the U.S. won't attack. Iran has been as well. And I just don't see this being, the U.S. response. And if you read Secretary Austin's responses to this, he's very clear that the U.S. is reluctant to do this. It's sending all the wrong messages to Iran and the militias.
So what other options does the U.S. have?
The U.S. has two options, in my estimation. It can either reinforce these bases, and that will require thousands of American troops to go into Iraq and Syria. I don't think this is politically acceptable for the Biden administration, nor for the Iraqi government, particularly at this time as the war between Israel and Hamas heats up. Or they need to leave. I mean, those are the two options, because if one of these bases is overrun, and we shouldn't discount that. If we look at the experience in Iraq during the U.S. occupation or U.S. presence in Afghanistan, these type of things have happened. U.S. bases have been overrun by determined groups, and these militia groups are battle-hardened with decades of fighting in Iraq and Syria, responsible for killing 600 American troops. We shouldn't underestimate them.
Bill, we've just been hearing from our correspondent who is on the border between Israel and Lebanon, and there has been a bit of activity there today. How worried do you think the U.S. is that this war is going to widen?
The U.S. is extremely concerned, and this is why its response in Iraq and Syria has been very measured. And I would describe it as, again, as tepid. And that is exactly what the U.S. does not want. It does not want this to break out into a regional conflict. That's why it's been putting the brakes on an Israeli offensive into Gaza. Some of that is related to U.S. hostages. But yes, I'm very concerned that this will widen. If these militias, by the way, do decide to weigh in, they're estimated to have hundreds of thousands of fighters in Iraq and Syria. If just a percentage of them, if 10%, if 20%, weigh in on the border in either Lebanon or in Syria, this could be a major problem for the Israelis.
Bill, good to get your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.